The early 19th century in America was a time of dramatic change, growth, and transformation. The nation was expanding, but the path of this growth was not predetermined. In fact, a number of shifting economic trends would play a pivotal role in determining the course of migration westward. In this narrative, we'll explore how the economic forces of the time, from agricultural expansion to industrial innovation, shaped the American westward migration between 1820 and 1850. This movement of people, driven by economic opportunity, redefined the landscape and the future of the United States. In the early 1800s, most Americans lived in the eastern part of the country. The eastern states, such as New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Massachusetts, were the heart of the nation's economy. Here, farming was the primary livelihood, and trade routes connected these regions to the rest of the world. However, by the 1820s, the United States was beginning to experience rapid changes, particularly in agriculture and industry. These changes would not only shift economic trends but also shape migration patterns. One of the earliest driving forces behind the migration to the West was the rise of agriculture. By the 1820s, the United States was primarily an agricultural nation, but with a growing population, eastern lands were becoming less fertile. More farmers were looking for land to settle, and they found opportunity to the west. The Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Homestead Acts had already set the stage for cheap, accessible land in the western territories. Land could be obtained for a fraction of the cost compared to the crowded, often expensive land in the east. At the same time, cotton cultivation had revolutionized the southern economy. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 led to an explosion in cotton production, which fed the Industrial Revolution back east. However, as the demand for cotton grew, so too did the demand for land. The southern economy needed more fertile soil to expand production, and the promise of land in the West, particularly in regions like Texas, became increasingly attractive. In the Northeast, industrialization was accelerating. By the 1830s, factories were beginning to churn out goods at an unprecedented rate, driven by technological innovations such as the steam engine and the mechanization of manufacturing. As these industries grew, the economy shifted towards manufacturing and urbanization, creating an influx of factory jobs. Yet the rise of industry also led to a shortage of labor in rural areas. Young men and women from the east, sometimes entire families, headed west to escape crowded urban centers and seek opportunities in farming, mining, and trade, all driven by the expanding market economy. Perhaps the most significant transformation in the early 19th century was the development of transportation networks. The invention of the steamboat and the expansion of the Erie Canal in the 1820s greatly reduced the cost and time of transporting goods. Goods could now be shipped more quickly and cheaply from the interior of the country to the coasts. Then came the railroad boom in the 1830s and 1840s. The completion of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1827 and the opening of other rail lines made travel to the west quicker, safer, and more reliable. Trains allowed for the efficient transport of people, supplies, and information, which made it much easier for settlers to move westward. The expansion of transportation networks also fostered the rise of westward migration trails, such as the Oregon Trail, which started in 1836, and the Santa Fe Trail used from the 1820s onwards. These routes connected the Midwest to the West, opening up large swaths of land for settlement. People began to see the West not just as a wilderness to be conquered, but as a place of possibility, a place where their families could prosper economically. By the late 1840s, an event would spark one of the most dramatic migrations in American history, the California Gold Rush of 1848. Gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill near Sacramento, and within months, tens of thousands of miners, entrepreneurs, and settlers flooded westward. This was more than just a rush for wealth. It was the culmination of years of economic trends, land hunger, technological innovation, and the pursuit of opportunity that made such a massive migration possible. As gold fever spread, entire communities formed around mining camps, and new towns sprang up almost overnight. This created an entirely new economy in California, one that was based not on traditional agriculture or industry, but on extraction and resource exploitation. The gold rush wasn't just about gold. The migration of thousands of people to California created a booming market economy. Merchants profited by selling goods to miners. Farmers established ranches to feed the growing population. Land speculation became a lucrative business, as more people arrived hoping to make their fortunes. In fact, the sheer volume of people arriving in California, along with the rapid development of infrastructure, such as railroads, helped transform California into an economic powerhouse by the end of the 1850s. Beyond the gold rush, the impact of westward migration and economic trends continued to reverberate. Agriculture and mining in the West became the backbone of the economy, but the migration was also increasingly tied to the expansion of railroads and business ventures. Cities like San Francisco and Portland grew rapidly, becoming commercial hubs in the western part of the United States. For many settlers, the West became the land of opportunity they had hoped for. But for others, the journey proved difficult, marked by hardships such as disease, isolation, and conflict with indigenous populations. The economic drive, however, was undeniable. The promise of land, the opportunity to build a future, and the lure of natural resources pulled countless Americans westward. From 1820 to 1850, the United States witnessed an unparalleled economic transformation that not only fueled westward migration, but also reshaped the very fabric of the nation. New technologies, agricultural expansion, industrialization, and the search for new resources all played key roles in this movement. What began as a trickle of hopeful settlers would soon become a mass migration that fundamentally altered the geography, economy, and culture of the United States. The westward migration, propelled by shifting economic forces, wasn't just about moving people, it was about moving a nation towards its future. A future that was, and still is, forever defined by the endless search for opportunity and the ever-expanding boundaries of the American dream. The story of American migration is still unfolding, as people continue to move west and south in search of new opportunities. The economic drivers may have changed, but the quest for a better life remains a central theme in the American experience.